Susan Marrow was excited for their annual summer trip to the beach. She had been planning this adventure since January and had already booked a hotel room near the shore. Her friends Kathy Simmons, Harper Langley, and Terrence Reed were all eagerly anticipating the fun that awaited them. As they drove down the coast towards their destination, Susan couldn't help but feel excited about what was to come. She had always loved going to the beach with her friends, and this year promised to be no different. Kathy was already singing along to the radio, while Harper sat quietly in the back seat, occasionally making sarcastic comments about the scenery. Terrence remained silent, but Susan could see the excitement building behind his stoic exterior. When they arrived at their hotel room, Susan immediately began unpacking their bags and setting up for a relaxing day at the beach. Kathy was already in her swimsuit, eager to hit the waves, while Harper lounged on the bed with a book. Terrence seemed lost in thought as he paced back and forth across the small room. The next morning, they woke up early and headed down to the beach. The sun was shining brightly, and the water looked inviting. Susan suggested that they go for a swim first thing, but Kathy and Harper were more interested in building sandcastles and collecting seashells. Terrence seemed hesitant at first, but eventually agreed to join them in the water. As they swam out towards the waves, Susan couldn't help but feel grateful for this beautiful day. She loved spending time with her friends, especially when they were doing something as fun and relaxing as going to the beach. Kathy was always up for a good laugh, while Harper had a unique way of looking at things that made them all think differently. And Terrence, despite his aloof exterior, seemed to be having a great time in the water with them. After their swim, they spent the rest of the day building sandcastles and collecting seashells. Kathy was particularly proud of her creation, which she dubbed the Great Wall of Sand. Harper, on the other hand, had collected an impressive array of shells that she arranged in a beautiful pattern on the beach. Terrence seemed to be enjoying himself, although he didn't say much about it. As the sun began to set, Susan suggested they have a picnic dinner on the beach. Kathy quickly whipped up some sandwiches and chips, while Harper helped set out their plates and napkins. Terrence brought along a cooler full of drinks, and they all sat down together to enjoy their meal under the stars. As they talked and laughed, Susan couldn't help but feel grateful for this perfect day at the beach with her friends. She loved spending time with them, especially when they were doing something as fun and relaxing as going to the beach. Kathy was always up for a good laugh, while Harper had a unique way of looking at things that made them all think differently. And Terrence, despite his aloof exterior, seemed to be having a great time in their company. As they sat on the beach, watching the sun set over the ocean, Susan couldn't help but feel a sense of nostalgia. She had been coming to this same spot every summer since she was a child, and it always felt like home to her. Kathy and Harper were chasing each other around in the sand, while Terrence sat quietly on his towel, lost in thought. Susan decided that they should go for a walk along the beach before dinner. She knew that this would be their last chance to enjoy the beauty of the ocean before they had to pack up and head back home. As they walked, Susan couldn't help but feel grateful for this perfect day with her friends. They were all so different from each other, yet they somehow fit together perfectly. Kathy was always up for a good laugh, while Harper had a unique way of looking at things that made them all think differently. And Terrence, despite his aloof exterior, seemed to be having a great time in their company. Susan loved spending time with them, especially when they were doing something as fun and relaxing as going to the beach. As they reached the end of the beach, Susan suggested that they have one last swim before dinner. Kathy was hesitant at first, but eventually agreed. Harper seemed to be enjoying herself in the water, while Terrence swam laps back and forth with a determined look on his face. As they returned to their hotel room, Susan couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness that this perfect day was coming to an end. But she knew that there would always be more adventures waiting for them in the future, and as long as they had each other, nothing could stop them from making more unforgettable memories together. As they sat down on their beds and began to pack up their belongings, Kathy suggested that they have one last group hug before they said goodbye. Susan agreed, and they all gathered in a circle, holding hands and laughing as they reminisced about the fun they had had that day. Harper was particularly emotional, tears streaming down her face as she thanked them for making this summer so special. Terrence seemed to be feeling a little more open than usual, smiling at each of his friends as he hugged them tightly. Susan couldn't help but feel grateful for the way that Terrence had been with them all day. Despite his aloof exterior, it was clear that he cared about them deeply. As they said their goodbyes and headed out to their separate rooms, Susan felt a sense of bittersweet nostalgia. She knew that this perfect summer would soon come to an end, but she also knew that they would always have each other. And as long as they had each other, nothing could stop them from making more unforgettable memories together in the future. As Susan drifted off to sleep that night, she couldn't help but feel grateful for this perfect day with her friends. She loved spending time with them, especially when they were doing something as fun and relaxing as going to the beach. Kathy was always up for a good laugh, while Harper had a unique way of looking at things that made them all think differently. And Terrence, despite his aloof exterior, seemed to be having a great time in their company. Susan knew that they would have many more adventures together in the future, and she couldn't wait to see what they came up with next. As they packed up their belongings and headed back to the hotel room, Susan couldn't help but feel sad that this perfect day was coming to an end. But she knew that there would always be more adventures waiting for them in the future. And as long as they had each other, nothing could stop them from making more unforgettable memories together.